Welcome to the Time Archive.
In the valleys of Vermont, a farmer named Samuel rises before dawn, the frost crunching beneath his boots. His breath hangs in the cold morning air, visible and trembling, as he steps toward his orchard. Each tree, once vibrant with promise, now stands blackened and broken, its fruit destroyed by the cruel midsummer frost. Samuel swings his axe repeatedly, the sound of each strike echoing across the valley, a grim percussion marking the death of his orchard and the collapse of his livelihood. Sweat and cold mix on his brow, his hands blistered from the effort, yet he cannot stop. The harvest has failed and survival demands action. Each fallen tree is a reminder of what was lost, each swing a measure of his despair and determination. Far across the sea in Ireland, a mother and her child wander miles over frozen fields, searching for anything to eat. They gather boiled grass, roots, and leaves, their hands raw and bleeding from the relentless labor. The child clutches the mother's coat, eyes hollow and questioning, yet aware that answers will not come. The mother moves steadily, driven by instinct and necessity, whispering soft reassurances to keep fear from turning into panic. They trudge past empty villages and abandoned farms, their bellies empty, their footsteps heavy with exhaustion. Hunger is constant, gnawing, a presence as tangible as the cold wind that whips across the barren hills. In Switzerland, families huddle around dwindling fires, burning furniture, and even floorboards to keep the chill at bay. The smoke curls and mixes with the icy air, filling rooms with the scent of charred wood. Children shiver beside their parents, wrapped in blankets too thin to truly stave off the cold. Outside, snow continues to fall unexpectedly in July, coating fields and rooftops, a stark contradiction to what should be a warm, sunny summer. The world has become strange, disorienting, and cruel. In London, streets are choked with fog, heavy and gray, tinged with ash from distant volcanoes that few yet understand. The sun appears as a dim, weak orb behind the haze, casting shadows that are long and uncertain. Merchants close their stalls early, children stay indoors, and pedestrians hurry along, heads down, wary of the unseen forces that seem to hang over the city. The air carries a bitter tang, and coughing rises from crowded homes where families attempt to stay warm. Through it all, children ask the same question again and again. Where has summer gone? Their voices are innocent, yet they echo a confusion and fear that adults struggle to conceal. And for months, there is no answer. The elders, the scholars, the clergy, all can only offer speculation, stories of celestial punishment, or prayers for mercy. Nothing explains the frost in June, the snow in July, the sun that refuses to shine with warmth. Even as despair spreads, small acts of resilience emerge. Neighbors share scraps of food. Farmers experiment with planting different seeds in the hope that something might survive. Families huddle closer, finding comfort in each other's presence when the world offers none. Humanity persists, not always with victory, but with endurance, carrying on in the face of incomprehensible forces. These are not tales of legend, nor of the extraordinary. They are the daily realities of ordinary lives caught in an extraordinary year. Every swing of Samuel's axe, every step of the mother and child, every burning hearth in Switzerland, every cautious walk through London's fog, these moments define the human spirit. In hardship, fear, and uncertainty, people continue. They adapt, they hope, they survive. And through all of it, the question lingers. What force, unseen and immense, has turned the natural order on its head? Humanity will endure, but the world has changed. The answers lie far from these fields and cities, waiting for the next chapter to reveal themselves. The answer lies far across the globe, in the lush tropical islands of Indonesia. On April 10th, 1815, Mount Tambora, a towering volcano that had slumbered for centuries, awakened with a fury unlike anything the world had ever witnessed. The eruption began with a low rumble, almost imperceptible at first, but within hours it escalated into a roar that shook the earth itself. Villagers nearby fled in terror as the ground trembled beneath their feet, and the sky above turned to fire and ash. A column of smoke, fire, and volcanic debris rose relentlessly, climbing an astonishing 40 kilometers into the sky, piercing the stratosphere. The explosion was so immense that it could be heard over 2,000 kilometers away, a sound unlike anything experienced by human ears, a deafening roar that seemed to come from the very heart of the planet. Rivers choked with pumice and molten rock, their waters boiling and blackened, while entire villages vanished, buried beneath layers of volcanic material. Fires ignited across the horizon, consuming forests and settlements in their path. Survivors would later recount the overwhelming darkness that followed, a darkness so complete that they could not see their own hands held before their faces. For days the sun was obscured, replaced by a sky thick with smoke and ash, a grim twilight that blotted out warmth and light. The eruption was not only a local disaster, it had consequences that would ripple around the world. Tons of volcanic ash and sulfur were hurled high into the atmosphere, forming a dense veil that circled the globe. This invisible cloud reflected sunlight back into space, reducing the warmth that reached the Earth's surface. Temperatures fell dramatically. Crops withered under the cold, unseasonable skies. Rivers, normally lifelines for communities, overflowed as weather patterns became erratic and unpredictable. The air carried a faint, acrid scent of sulfur, a reminder of the distant but all-encompassing force that had altered life across continents. Weeks passed, and the effects began to manifest far from Indonesia. Across Europe, the sun rose pale and weak, casting skies of deep red and purple, colors unnatural for the northern hemisphere. Crops shriveled in the fields and harvests failed repeatedly. Rivers flooded lowlands that had never known such waters, and famine began to creep quietly into villages and towns. In North America, frost lingered in June, destroying young crops and blighting the hopes of farmers who had planted with care. The chill and ash seemed to travel invisibly, an unseen hand stretching across oceans and continents, imposing the wrath of a single eruption upon the entire globe. Tambora's shadow was invisible, yet its reach was total. The natural order had been upended. Summer, that season of warmth and abundance, had vanished from the earth. The eruption demonstrated the immense power of nature, forces so vast that one mountain could alter the lives of millions, reshape climates, and challenge the very expectations of the human experience. People across the globe did not yet know the origin of their suffering, only its symptoms. Frost in July, storms that seemed endless, rivers flooding without reason. These were the signs of a world unsettled, a climate in turmoil. Scientists, clergy, and farmers alike searched for answers, but they were searching blindly. The mountain had spoken, and the earth had listened, carrying its message in silence and shadow to every corner of the inhabited world. In the weeks and months that followed, humanity would face the consequences of Tambora's wrath: failed harvests, famine, disease, and societal upheaval. And yet, in the midst of chaos, people would endure. They would adapt, innovate, and find ways to survive a year in which the earth itself seemed to conspire against them. This was the invisible hand of Tambora, a force so powerful, so distant, yet so intimately felt by every person living through that extraordinary year. It was a reminder of the delicate balance between humanity and nature, a balance easily disturbed, yet a challenge that humans, in their resilience, would rise to meet. In New England, hope planted in the soil with each seed was crushed almost as soon as it had begun. Fields sown in June, expected to bloom and yield life-sustaining crops, were obliterated by frost come July. Corn, wheat, and oats, tender shoots that should have grown tall under the summer sun, lay blackened and broken, victims of a season gone awry. Farmers wandered their lands in disbelief, hands brushing over the frozen stalks as if to awaken them, but the plants offered no life, no promise. Only the silent testimony of failure. Hunger crept quietly into homes, an uninvited guest. Families boiled weeds, stripped bark from trees, and even softened and cooked leather, desperate for something to fill empty bellies. The once bustling markets were nearly abandoned. Bread, a staple of sustenance, became a luxury. Its price climbed with frightening speed, beyond the reach of ordinary citizens. In towns and villages, the bonds that tied neighbors together began to fray. Suspicion and resentment crept in, small acts of theft and hoarding becoming acts of survival. The social fabric strained under the pressure of scarcity as fear and hunger eclipsed community and trust. Across the Atlantic, Europe suffered in equally relentless ways. Rain fell day after day, unbroken and unrelenting, saturating the fields and forests. In Switzerland, rivers swelled, spilling into farmlands, while France experienced devastating floods that washed away not only crops, but the hopes and efforts of generations of farmers. The bounty of the land disappeared beneath water and mud, and riots erupted as people, desperate for food, fought to claim what little remained. Families fled their homes, carrying what possessions they could, seeking higher ground, warmer conditions, or simply another place where they might survive. Hunger and cold became universal companions, pressing on every continent, every town, every household touched by the erratic climate. Yet amid this turmoil, humanity endured. Even in the shadow of disaster, people found ways to adapt. Farmers experimented with new crops and alternative planting methods, learning quickly which plants could survive the frost and excessive rains. Storage techniques were reinvented. Communities devised new ways to preserve what little food they could salvage. Local officials, understanding the urgency of the crisis, attempted to manage distribution distribution, allocating rations with as much fairness as possible. Doctors recorded strange ailments arising from malnutrition and weakened immune systems, documenting them for future generations, aware that knowledge would be crucial in mitigating the next catastrophe. Despite the despair, life continued. Children still played in the meager hours of sun or the brief pauses between storms. Parents worked tirelessly to provide what they could, even when their own strength was failing. Villagers came together, sharing resources when possible, holding small feasts of whatever was available, and finding warmth in one another's presence. The human instinct to survive proved stronger than the obstacles nature imposed, and communities began to adjust to a world in which the climate no longer followed the predictable rhythm of the past. And yet, beneath all these efforts, the world remained changed. The extraordinary events of this year left a mark not only on the land, but on the psyche of every person who lived through it. Children born during this time would grow up with stories of hunger and frost in midsummer. Farmers would never forget the lessons of failed crops. Towns and villages would remember the fear, the scarcity, and the remarkable resilience that had carried them through. This was a global crisis, not confined by borders or oceans. From the frost-bitten fields of New England to the flood-ravaged valleys of Europe, the aftermath of Tambora's eruption was evident in every corner of the inhabited world. It was a reminder of humanity's vulnerability, but also of its enduring strength, the ability to adapt, to survive, and to press forward even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Life, as fragile as it seemed under these harsh conditions, continued. People worked, planned, and hoped. They innovated out of necessity, discovering methods and strategies that would influence agriculture and medicine for generations to come. And in the midst of hardship, the human spirit, stubborn, resilient, and quietly defiant, persisted, ready to face whatever the world might bring next. In Geneva, the air was thick with the scent of rain and ozone, the storm outside lashing the surface of Lake Geneva with relentless force. Lightning tore across the sky, illuminating the jagged peaks of the Alps in brief, brilliant flashes. Thunder rolled over the water and mountains like the drumbeat of some immense, unseen force, shaking the walls of Villa Diodati, where 5 young travelers had sought refuge from the storm. Within the house, the travelers gathered by candlelight, the flickering flames casting long, dancing shadows across the walls. The wind howled outside, rattling windows and doors, and the rain beat against the roof with a persistent fury. There was a sense of unease, a palpable tension born from the world beyond the walls. The year itself, 1816, had cast a shadow over the earth, and even here in the comfort of shelter, that shadow was felt. Lord Byron, ever dramatic and ever daring, proposed a challenge. Write a ghost story to match this darkness. His voice carried both command and inspiration, cutting through the storm's roar. The challenge was not merely a literary exercise, but a response to the strange and unsettling year they were living through, a way to channel fear and uncertainty into creativity. By candlelight, they took up pens and paper. Mary Shelley, inspired by the violent energy of the storm and the relentless cold that had claimed summers across the globe, imagined a tale unlike any before, of a scientist, Victor Frankenstein, who defies nature itself to create life from death, animated by the mysterious and terrifying forces of electricity. In her imagination, the creature stirred to life beneath a storm-tossed sky, echoing the very chaos outside the windows. Her mind and soon her words wrestled with questions of ambition, morality, and the consequences of human curiosity and hubris.